Good evening, folks, and welcome back to ARCA Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Evans, aka Starting Park Car here, and we have a fun episode for you guys today. We're not in my normal office area. I am in my hotel room. As you guys know, I am in a hotel room. I'm in Illinois this weekend for the Gateway races. With them being close to my house, I thought, why not? Let's go to them for another year. But we're back with the ARCA Racing Podcast on our normal time on Thursdays at 7 p.m. So I welcome you all to the show as we see some more people filing in. We're going to go through my little intro. You guys know I go through at the beginning of every podcast, and then we will jump right into the ARCA action. We got two fun races to talk about today. You guys know the drill. Follow me on social media at Starting Park Car on Twitter. We just hit 4,700 followers. Thanks again for the continued support. Like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that bell for all notifications so you guys never miss a podcast when we go live. And, of course, check out theracingexperts.com for all NASCAR meet-related content. So let's jump right into it, shall we? We had Charlotte, I said it on the NASCAR Backmarker Battles review show that Charlotte is without a doubt one of my favorite of the so-called cookie cutter racetracks. Charlotte is definitely my favorite of those, just from the high grooves to the low grooves, just tire wear. Everything about the track is just perfect in my opinion. It's one of the very few mile and a halves that I would just say is absolutely perfect and you never have to change it. And I always thought it was questionable for ARCA to come back there. They've been running Charlotte ever since 2018. They stopped going there in the early 2000s, but they returned in 2018. I thought it was kind of a questionable move in the beginning because it's like even by the end of 2018, the fields were starting to condense a little bit, and it did get pretty bad. For a brief time. In 2021, we only had 23 cars. And I remember talking on that podcast, does ARCA need to go to Charlotte? That was the race where Ty Gibbs was a second a lap faster than the entire field. It was pretty bad. 2022, I called it one of the best ARCA races of the season because it was. It really was. The battles between Raja Carruth, Nick Sanchez, and Daniel Dye, it was very entertaining throughout. This race was kind of a mix. It wasn't bad, but I wouldn't call it great. We had our moments of good and bad. Some people, again, we had some embarrassing moments, but you're going to have that sometimes in this series. But I still wouldn't call the race bad by any means, but I'm not going to say it was on par with what it was last year. We did have a bigger car count than last year, which was the biggest positive. We had 29 cars initially on the entry list. A couple of them withdrew. The 87 of Chuck Buchanan withdrew before he even showed up to the track. And the 72 of Cody Coughlin would actually withdraw following practice. So in reality, we only had 27 cars starting this race, but still a bigger field size than the previous year. And we also did not have any starting parks in the field, which was a nice reminder. Coming into this race, I was definitely skeptical. Jesse Love dominated Kansas. They brought the exact same car to Charlotte. Brought the exact same car, so it's like, man, even though my picks for the show were Grant Enfinger and Taylor Gray, if they bring in that same car from Kansas, which is just set up perfectly, they're going to be pretty tough to beat. In practice showed some mixed results, kind of what we figured. Taylor Gray, like I said, that Tricon entry, they've got it really going on, even though it's hard to believe it's only their second start of the year, but man, they really got their stuff figured out. Impressively won practice. They actually ran their fastest lap. The most impressive stat about it is they ran their fastest lap of practice on the last lap that they ran. That's the most impressive part about it. Andres Perez de Lara, he just continues to get better in the two car. He was second. Connor Mosek was third. Gus Dean was fourth. And like I said, I didn't think Jesse Love necessarily had the winning speed because he was only fifth quickest. But the top 7 cars were separated by less than half a second. So I'm like, that is your top 7 of realistical winners. I was skeptical coming into this race how Grant Enfinger would do because I said, Grant Enfinger, he's an A-plus driver, yes, but he's driving for a B-plus caliber team. How much can he realistically do in this 97 car? That was my kind of the biggest question we talked about on last Thursday's show was how will Grant Enfinger do in a car that is less than to what we know he's really capable of. Still not bad at all. And I knew he still had a logistical shot, but him being over 0.8 of a second off, unfortunately was just not the best omen, because we knew he's better than that, but that's all the car probably has in it. Frankie Muniz, Greg Van Alst, Tony Breidinger, Andy J, and Cody Coughlin, they were all kind of the cars that were holding the mid-pack, and then you kind of had 14th on down were kind of the stragglers. Not necessarily the slow stragglers, but the guys that won't really run any better than 10th, but will still run a really decent pace, like Cosentino, like Melton, like Costner, like Christian Rose. Then you got kind of the slower stragglers, Brayton Laster, John Garrett, Stephanie Moyer. It's not because they're slow, because they're bad drivers. It's just because, we love Andy Hillenberg on this show, but his cars are obviously a little bit older. But hey, that's not a knock on Andy Hillenberg. God love that man. God bless everyone on that team. You guys know I'm a big Andy Hillenberg fan. Brian Dowsett, Ed Pompa, like I said, more of the stragglers. And then you had the really, and again, I work for the team, but I have to say we were really slow. Brad, Alex Clubb, and AJ Moyer. AJ Moyer especially, only a 44-second lap was his fastest lap. And I was wondering what that was. Now, a lot of people have gotten on AJ Moyer this season. I've been a little defendant on that. This was not his fault. We will get to the 06 when we get to the race portion of the show. But as you'll come to see, this was not all AJ's fault. There was a reason why the 06 really struggled this weekend. But overall, I thought, like I said, coming from practice, we had a very mix of cars that could logistical win this race. Obviously, 3 of the 4 Venerini cars, both Reb entries, JGR and Tricon. And with the underdog of the 97, it was all unpredictable. Qualifying showed really that everyone was going to be chasing the 20. I mean, a monster slap. The only guy to crack the 29s, Jesse Love, wins the pole. Andres Perez stayed in second, so good for him. He still was able to stay in second. Taylor Gray dropped down to third. Dean Thompson was up to fourth. Connor Mosag dropped down to sixth, and Gus Dean all the way down to sixth as well. Some improvements. Andy J was able to qualify top 10. And that was pretty much the only change. A lot of the practice results kind of carried over to qualifying. Brad didn't try on his qualifying lap. That's why he only ran a 126. And then AJ Moyer. AJ Moyer only ran 1 lap of the 2 laps that he got, and it was a 48-second lap. And I'm just like, man, this is the Ford that Peterson that was crashed at Talladega. We need to reprise that. This Ford that AJ Moyer was driving was crashed at Talladega by Kevin Hinkle, and they had fixed it. This was the first race for it. Now, obviously, when you're thrashing to get a car ready, sometimes you miss a couple things with the setup. And as we would come to find out, that unfortunately they missed the setup a lot, unfortunately. So we get to the race Friday, and I tell you, man, it's I was excited, man. I was really excited for this. The green flag came out, and Jesse Love, man, he has just nailed these restarts. Every single one shoots out like a damn rocket over Andres. Andres, with his kind of rookie experience, didn't get the best start. Taylor Gray shot up to second. Andres fell back to fourth. Mosak got up to third. Unfortunately, the race was quickly stopped by a quick caution. Unfortunately, the 12 of Brayton Laster in a rare full race appearance by one of Andy's usual start in the park entries. The 12 ran the whole distance. Good to see Brayton run the whole distance. He didn't crash, luckily. He just kind of spun out. Well, unfortunately, that did cost him a lap and probably would have been a better finish. But, hey, still love to see Brayton run the whole race. So they got back going again. And again, the 20 just like a rocket just shoots out to the lead. Mosek is the clear initial challenger in the beginning. Dean Thompson holds a strong third. Taylor Gray holds a strong fourth. They are the guys to beat in this race. You might see some other guys get into the top 5 and maybe the top 10, but it's clear these are going to be the guys that you're going to have to beat in order to win this race. We had another quick caution 5 laps later. And I don't know what's happened. And this guy is not even a rookie. He's not a rookie by any means. Sean Corr has been in the sport for well over 10 years. He spun like 3 times at Kansas. Once in testing, damaged his car, had to run a damaged car in the race, and still spun in the race. And he spins not once, but twice in this race. And I'm just like, this guy's a seasoned veteran of NASCAR. He's competed in the Truck Series. He's made practice laps in an Xfinity car. And he's a seasoned veteran of the ARCA Series in general, even with this new body. Why is Sean Corr wrecking so much? Who is setting up the car this bad? I don't know, man. I don't know, but the A car spun twice within 30 laps. They actually ended up parking the car, they said, due to radiator issues. But I just wonder if they parked it just because they ran out of tires, because I think there was only a 2 set of tire allotment for this race. And both of those spins used up the 8's tires. I don't know if they had any tires left. Maybe that's why they parked. I don't know. But really surprising to see Sean Corr, a seasoned veteran of just stock car racing in general. I mean, we've been hearing his name for well over 10 years. And it's surprising. It's surprising to see him struggle that bad. In between those cautions, though, we actually did have a pass for the lead. Connor Mosek showing that while the Gibbs car is definitely not as strong as it's been the last 2 years, still got a lot of fire in it. He takes the lead. Connor Mosek, this was before he started driving like an idiot out there. But Connor Mosek was leading. Jesse Love was holding a close second. Dean Thompson, long run speed with that car. He was coming around more in that run. Taylor Gray, Grant Enfinger. Andy J, shout out to Andy J. This was the same car that they actually ran at Kansas that had an oil line come loose. Andy J apparently burnt his feet, which sucks. Luckily, his feet have healed now. And the car was repaired. They put new body on it, new engine in it. And luckily for him, the car was plenty fast. And it makes me wonder, man, how good he could have done at Kansas, because he was top 5 on testing day for ARCA. It makes me wonder what he could have done in the race. Unfortunately, we never got to know that. But it's clear that the car had speed. He ran no worse than top 10 all day in that ARCA race, and it got as high as 4th at one point. To address the elephant in the room, we did have some starting parks to pull off. CJ McLaughlin, who originally was supposed to run the whole distance in the 0-1 for Andy Hillenberg, he missed the Xfinity race. So I can only imagine that they probably start and parked this race because he was running this ARCA race to get more experience in the 12 or more experience for the Xfinity race. And since he didn't make the Xfinity race, I guess there was no need to run the whole race, because people were telling me all day that the 0-1 was whole race and then CJ parks it. I mean, they said it was planned, but yet I had people in Fast Track tell me it's a full race. It doesn't make sense. Honestly, I don't understand why CJ's even doing these start and parks in general. I don't know what he's learning. I don't know what a 20-lap start and park in ARCA is going to help you get any extra practice. Clearly, it wasn't enough because he missed the Xfinity race. And AJ Moyer. Now, the elephant in the room was AJ Moyer. I'm sure you guys have seen the video, and I know it's an old video by now because this race happened almost a week ago, but the Couch Racer Twitter account posted a video of the 06 car going, and I'll even say this, painfully. I mean, we're talking, I thought Brad was slow. I didn't know the 06 was going this slow around the track. Literally the fastest lap that AJ Moyer ran out of the 16 laps he did on track at Charlotte was a 127 mile per hour lap average. That is about what the driving experience cars do. Now, people were saying, oh, park the 06. Yes, rightfully so. They did park it. But I'll give ARCA this. They tried to at least give Peterson the best shot possible. ARCA always tries to work with these lower teams to give them the best shot possible. Now, unfortunately, it didn't work. And thankfully, ARCA quickly parked him. And of the 12 laps that he actually ran, only 5 of those were actually green flag laps. So it's not like he was out there for 12 green flag laps and people were asking him to get parked. No, it was only 5 laps. And I was wondering what it was. Was the car stuck in gear? Because I was listening to some people saying, well, maybe the car was stuck in gear. And that's what I thought it was. Maybe it was stuck in gear and he didn't want to push it too hard. But it was actually, shout out to a friend who got a hold of the Peterson spotter. They had missed the setup apparently so bad that the car only had one-wheel drive. And they didn't notice that until the race itself when AJ came in for a pit stop. And when he drove out of the box, only one wheel, like, when they do a burnout out of the pit box, only one wheel did the burnout and the other wheel just rolled away, which is weird considering, man, you wouldn't normally see something like that, but that's how I guess they noticed it. Man, we only got one-wheel drive. And I'll say is when you mix one-wheel drive with an old motor, because remember, in these legacy motors for ARCA, they lose an extra 150 horsepower. So you're already at a heavily reduced motor. You have a rookie driver, one-wheel drive, and a heavily reduced horsepower motor. Unfortunately, you really do have a recipe for disaster. You could say, do you blame Peterson Motorsports? I don't know. They were thrashing to get this car ready. They just missed the setup. A rookie driver doesn't want to hurt anything. I don't know why ARCA penalizes the legacy cars so much. And it's the one thing I really wanted to make a video about there for you guys. Brad Smith is not that slow every single week because he's being slow on purpose. They take an extra 150 horsepower out of our cars. If Brad was able to have that extra 150 horsepower, would he still be off the pace? Yes, but he wouldn't be 3.5 seconds off pace off a lap. It'd probably be only about a second and a half at most. At tracks like this, where he was 8 seconds a lap off the pace, you give him back that extra 150 horsepower, he's probably only about 2 seconds a lap off the pace. For the people who really complain about that, they don't understand that either. So again, like I'm trying to say is rookie driver, one-wheel drive, and an old motor, you just, unfortunately, like I said, you have a recipe for disaster. And I feel bad for Peterson Motorsports. It really was an embarrassing moment. I got a lot of friends on that team. I hate to see them go through that. I tried to post a tweet about it on Saturday following the race, explaining what happened. And I've tried to defend this team left and right, man, but people were just burying this team. And I hate it. I hate it because Wayne has worked so hard. It's weird to say this, but in 2023, Wayne Peterson Racing is arguably the most competitive they've ever been. And that's really weird saying that. But ever since 2019 and Tim Richmond came along, Peterson Motorsports has actually been competitive somewhat in ARCA when, let's face it, they weren't. And that's coming from a guy who used to do a couple of races with them a year. So I feel for AJ Moyer. It wasn't his fault. And I just say it's the team. I don't want to blame the team, but at the end of the day, they didn't set up the car correctly. Should they have brought the trusty Chevrolet instead, like the yellow Chevrolet? Probably so. But just a bad case, an unfortunate bad case of events that resulted for Peterson Motorsports. And but not the best look. But I don't blame AJ Moyer. Unfortunately, the team just missed the setup. You're going to have those days. It is what it is. So those were AJ was not a start in park, though. He was supposed to run the whole race. The 0-1 apparently was. The 31 of Stephen Light. I was curious about this entry. I really was curious about this entry with Rise Motorsports. But, man, ever since practice started, they just had engine issues. And, unfortunately, Stephen had to pull in after 25 laps due to a legit motor problem. They did not start and park the race. Going back to the actual racing action, Jesse Love had reclaimed the lead. And then we finally had a lead change that I did not expect to see. Dean Thompson, he would get the lead under caution when, for who else? Scott Melton, everybody's favorite ARCA driver, Scott Melton, crashed again. How many times is this guy going to crash? Seriously. I mean, he has crashed so much in just the last couple years. And, Scott's not a young guy. I'm surprised he can take these kinds of bad crashes and still be able to show up to the track in one piece. He's really taken some hard hits. And he's, like I said, he's not a young guy. I think he's late 50s, early 60s. So it's actually quite impressive that he can take these kinds of crashes and still be able to, show up the next time. But, Scott's got plenty of money with his insurance agency. So they'll get the car repaired. They'll be back out there. But it just sucks to see Kimmel Racing going through yet another crash-related DNF. been a rough couple weeks for Will Kimmel and his team, but I'm sure with all the crashes that they built with Scott, if anything, they probably just call it another day at the track. So yeah, we had a couple of lead changes by this point. Dean Thompson had taken the lead. They came back out on track, and literally they ran like one lap until the comp yellow. The biggest moment of the race was Greg Van Alst on the competition caution lap. They used this as a caution. Some cars had came to pit road. Some of the Venturini cars had chosen to come to pit road, including the 18 of Connor Mosack. Now, as we know, tire differences at Charlotte mean a ton. And the cars on the track so far, I don't believe had pitted yet. So Mosack had pretty good tires. And one of those cars that had stayed out but was still towards the rear of the pack was the 35 of Greg Van Alst. And unfortunately, literally, like Greg said, they were a couple laps, literally 4 laps from the stage end. And they take the green flag and going into turn 3, and it's just, I don't think the 35 knew that the 18 was on fresh tires. I don't think the 18 knew the 35 wasn't on fresh tires. Unfortunately, they came together, and, the 18, which has an unlimited budget, they have unlimited money. I don't want to hear anyone tell me that the 18 does not have unlimited money. They do. I'm sorry. You can try to say, oh, the 18's got their own budget. They're on a type. No, they're not. Okay. JGR is loaded. It's just like Hendrick, Penske, and I'll even say RFK. They've got plenty of money to spend. Okay. The ARCA team is the least of their concerns. If they got to replace an ARCA car, they can replace an ARCA car. Then you got Greg Van Alst's team who don't have a lot, if anything at all. And they're just trying to do the best they can every week with what they have. And I will say it's just another case of, just closing rate issues. The 35, obviously, he's on old tires, so he's not going to be able to get through the corner as good. And the 18's on new tires, so he just threw that sucker into turn 3, and it just came together. They came together. I will say I wish the 18 had maybe held up a little bit. And, the worst part is it wasn't just a simple hit the wall. The 35, it's killed. That car is heavily damaged. I don't even know if they're going to get that repaired. That was Greg's only Mustang body that was ready to go. So a fresh Mustang that had 2 races on it is now destroyed. And it was a really sad interview. And what a fall for Greg Van Alst. And I hate it so much. I thought we really had a championship battle in our hands, man. Following Phoenix, man, he had over a 25-point lead. We really had a shot at an underdog champion. And then he gets taken out at Talladega. The Kansas, he didn't have a bad day. He just, didn't have the best speed. So a 10th place finish. And then the crash here. And it's just like bad luck. And I hate it so much because Greg Van Alst, if there was a most popular driver in ARCA, he, next to probably Brad Smith, is the most popular driver. And I just feel so much for him. The 18, they don't have to worry about money. They don't have to worry about body parts. They don't have to worry about motors. The 35, they don't know if they can make it to next week. Greg Van Alst would say in an interview with a fellow media company that they I almost go back, but they actually spent more money going down to Daytona than they did actually winning Daytona. Now, that's nothing new. That's been in the ARCA series for many years now. You'll probably spend more money than you do winning Daytona, as big of a moment as it was. But the one thing that Greg Van Alst did say, and I'm glad he said it because I've been saying it on here for a long time, people are saying that ARCA is a complete waste of money. It's not. ARCA is the exact same cost as late models now. Late model racing has gotten as expensive, especially as well. I think the difference with late model racing is they don't do the kind of pit stops that ARCA does, and you don't necessarily need fuel cans. You can just use like a little giant bottle. But yeah, he said, I might only run 1 or 2 events of these things and just run with my 2 sons. And it's just, that's kind of scary to think, because, he was part-time in 2021, ran full-time in 2022. And in this season, he's just, like I said, it's not his fault. He's just had a lot of bad luck. And it's just scary to think that he might have to miss a race. Now, I don't think he'll miss a race. They do have a car, I'm sure, that they have ready for Berlin. But the problem is it's not going to be a good car, I bet. I'm not saying they have bad equipment, but it's probably a car that they don't want to use. and they don't want to, and it's not necessarily ready to go. It was just kind of there if needed. I do hope that JGR, Connor Mosack, went to JGR and said, hey, can we give this guy some stuff? Because he should. I know that they visit each other after the race. Shout out to Toby Christie, who got the footage of them talking after the race. But I really hope Connor Mosack and JGR got just something for Greg Van Alst, because that crash was uncalled for. And I just hate it. And I'm going to say this, all due respect, Jamie Little making jokes about that on commentary, not funny. Not funny at all. And honestly, I wanted to talk about this at some point. Jamie Little, she was an awesome pit reporter. I mean this in the nicest possible way. She's not that good on commentary. And I don't think she's improved that much, if at all. Phil Parsons is the only guy who really feels like he knows what he's talking about out there. Jamie Little is one of the best pit reporters. She was awesome in her ESPN days, and no denying that. But she just can't do it as a commentator. Whereas Phil Parsons, it feels like Phil Parsons is either correcting her or he's just calling the race himself half the time. Phil Parsons is one of the best commentators in the business. I don't know why he gets so much hate. But her making the jokes about Greg Van Alst, and then overall watching the Charlotte race, she just wasn't calling any action. It was like she would talk about the drivers instead of calling the race. And it's like, no, like, you're not a wrestling commentator. Call the race. Don't talk about the drivers themselves. Call the race. Call what you're seeing on track. And it's like, all you get out of her is, oh, what a great move. Oh, look at that. Like, no. And then there's Phil Parsons, who's actually calling the race and what's happening. I got nothing against Jamie Little, but we got to get people in the booth that actually know what they're doing. Get her back to pit reporting. I'm sorry, but in the year and a half that she has been on commentary, I have seen little improvement. But Phil Parsons is a gem and should be on the commentary spot. He is phenomenal. Jamie Little, phenomenal pit reporter, but in my opinion, just can't cut it as a main commentator. I'm not trying to be rude with that statement, not one bit, not to Jamie Little or anyone. I mean that in the nicest possible way, but I'm not the only one who has talked about this at all. But yeah, I did not like the jokes that she was making about Greg Van Alst possibly missing the next race, because she doesn't know the kind of troubles that he has to go through just to get to these races. So, sorry, I was going to talk about that at some point, but since, I kind of brought up the Jamie Little jokes, I just had to get that out there, okay? Nothing against her, but go back to pit reporting and get Phil Parsons in the lead commentator position. Bring back Jim Trado. Him and Jim Trado, though, that was the best ARCA commentator team. And Ray Dunlap as the pit. Who else misses Ray Dunlap? I loved Ray Dunlap. He was awesome. So, sorry. Let's get back to the race. So, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of my underdog guys have had issues. And then, the team I work for, Brad Smith, we had our fair share of issues as luck as well. Brad actually would run over some lead or ballast, as they like to call it, on track. And unfortunately, destroyed the nose. So how about that? 66 plus races on that nose. And the one thing that ruins it, not a crash, stupid piece of lead on track. So unfortunately for Brad Smith, the Chevrolet will be taken out of action for a while. Because, five-star bodies is not getting any cheaper, unfortunately. You talk about price gouging. I think, a new nose is, $1,000? A new fender is, $400? That's a lot. And Brad doesn't have that kind of money lying around, so I would expect Brad to probably run the Ford at the majority, if not the rest of the year, while they try to get the Chevy. More than likely, I would say it's done for the year. I would say the Chevy's done for the year, and that car will return to service in 2024, and they're probably going to use this now for the Ford the rest of the year. So the unfortunate part about that, I will say, is Brad will probably do a lot of start and parking because this is a new car. He doesn't want to hurt it. So it wouldn't shock me if you see him start and parking some races. maybe like a Berlin, definitely the road courses. He might run Iowa the whole distance. I hope he does because I'm working that race because it'll be a big field, and the big field races pay better in terms of bonus money, not actual purse money, but bonus money. So he'll probably run the whole race for those. But it wouldn't shock me if Brad does some starting parks that he doesn't want to just because of the damage that he received to his car. So meanwhile, like I said, for all my low-budget guys who are continuing to have issues, and Alex Clubb, he went to the garage area due to his car has been having clutch issues for the past couple races. So they went to the garage. He would get back out on track, finish 46 laps down. But at this point, the field had thinned down just to 19 cars, but we still had all the competitive cars up front. And the race had kind of settled down at this point. Jesse Love pulled out to a huge lead. Like I said, just like what we saw at Kansas and just like what we were seeing in this race, the long run speed of Jesse Love, that's what was winning him this race. So shout out to his crew chief. Is his crew chief Shannon Rush? Is that who's on the 20 car? Or am I getting that wrong? Yes, it is Shannon Rush. He's really good at his job. I'm telling you, if there's one guy who really knows how to set up a car, it's Shannon Rush. He's been one of Ben Arini's best crew chiefs and just nailed the setup perfectly. The long run speed really carried him over time. And he was pulling a decent sized lead over Dean Thompson. You know, Dean Thompson would sometimes close in a bit, but then it would extend back out, close in a little bit. And then by the end of the race, it was really starting to spread out. The 20 was on its way to win without a doubt once again. Dean Thompson, he was just doing everything he could, but it appeared he had run the tires off of his car. And Taylor Gray, doing what Taylor Gray usually does, he didn't wreck, but he kept over driving the corners. He would fly down the straightaways. He would throw the car into the corner. It wouldn't stick, so it would slide up. He eventually hit the wall, but kept going, just like he did at Kansas. But it's like a case of Taylor. He was just overdriving the car. He was just overdriving it. And I don't blame him, though. You're 7 seconds back. You're trying to catch the leaders, but the problem is that the process is trying to go faster. Like, you guys know the quote, right? That trying to go faster can actually make you slower. So that was the unfortunate part for Taylor Gray. And then we had the other kind of big moment of the race, the final caution with 4 laps to go, the 11, which had been smoking almost the entire race of Stephanie Moyer, but I'm glad she ran the whole distance nonetheless. She spun out, luckily didn't hit anything. Luckily did not hit anything, so she kept going, but it did bunch the field up. And they did all have one set of tires left in the pits. So now it became a question of who was going to stay out and who was going to pit. At the time of caution, we did have 10 cars on the lead lap. Now, I was hoping we would see some creativity with who would stay out. I was hoping that maybe like a Muniz, it's been the one thing that bothers me. When you have a late race caution, like 2 laps to go, and the entire top 20 comes to pit road. If you're outside the top 10, just stay out. Chances are you're not going to finish any worse than you were running. And the same thing applies here. Guy like a Muniz, a guy like a Jankowiak, Christian Rose had the balls to stay out. Why didn't Jankowiak do it? Why didn't Enfinger do it? Why didn't Muniz do it? Why didn't Jack Wood do it? It was a kind of confusing to me that they all came down and only Christian Rose had the balls to stay out. Now, Christian wasn't really showing the best speed all day, but I will say this. For a car that was not showing race-winning speed all day, he hung on a lot better than I thought he would on that last restart. We all got to give him that. When that last restart came, I just fully expected him to spin the tires and he'd fall back through the field. But credit to him, he actually stayed up with the leader until the backstretch, which was a lot longer than I thought he would last, considering the new tires. And it actually paid off with probably a better finish than where he would have finished. He ended up 8th. But yeah, that kind of also sealed the fate for the cars behind him, with Jesse probably getting a straight shot out. And even though Dean Thompson tried to make a run at him once again, just like Kansas, I will say if the 15 of Dean Thompson had just one more lap, like Kansas, one more lap, I think we'd be looking at a different person in victory lane. Unfortunately, we did not get that extra lap, and Jesse Love collects his third straight win in the ARCA Menard Series for 2023. And Gear Wrench, they had not been a Venturini sponsor. I think they were a new Venturini sponsor this year, but now they get their second win of the year with Jesse Love. I believe, is this their second win of the year? So good for Gear Wrench getting their sponsor wins. Dean Thompson was second for the second time, ironically. Taylor Gray was third. Grant Enfinger, shout out to him. He ended up fourth in the Cody Robar car. Andy Jankoya get an awesome, top 5 finish for Class Motorsports. Frankie Muniz, again, doing a solid job. With a lot better than probably anyone thought he would do. 6th place. Andres Perez de Lara, kind of surprising. He only ran 7th. Christian Rose 8th. Connor Mosak, who was driving like a complete, I'll be honest with you, he was driving like a dumbass out there the entire race. I'm sorry. There was a point where Mosak was literally running with Gus Dean, and for like 5 laps straight, they were beating the crap out of each other on track. Like he was so frustrated that he couldn't pass Gus Dean that he almost wrecked himself like 10 times. It was so dumb seeing how the 18 was driving out there. He finally got past him. And I'll give a shout out to Gus Dean for showing the best patience that anyone could. I mean, Dean, he's a veteran of this sport too, and he had every right to probably junk the 18, and he didn't. So yeah, 18 finished 9th, probably the worst run for the 18 overall this year. Jack Wood only 10th. Tony Cosentino, again, a team that does a lot with very little. Shout out to them, another 11th place finish. Tony Breidinger, very solid 12th for her. Caleb Costner, 13th. Great return after their car was crashed at Talladega. John Garrett, 14th. Gus Dean down in 15th. Ed Pompa, 16th. Stephanie Moyer, 17th. Brian Dowsett, 18th. Brayton Laster, 19th. Brad Smith was a DNF in 20th after 61 laps. Again, they tried to keep going after the damage. There was a couple of on-track moments where you could see the damage on track, but it was kind of hard to spot. Unfortunately, the left front suspension was just severely hurt. I mean, that suspension was hanging on by a thread anyway, so any type of hit to it was going to severely damage it. Alex Clubb did end up finishing the race, 21st, and then the DNFs, 22nd, Greg Van Elst, 23rd, Scott Melton, 24th, Sean Core, 25th, Stephen Light, 26th, CJ McLaughlin, and 27th, A.J. Moyer. Standings following this race, I tell you, I don't want to say it's kind of a lockout at this point. For some reason, Racing Reference has not updated the ARCA points. It's still showing the point structure from Kansas. I don't know why, but if we do some math, and that's Racing Reference for you. I hate what's happened to Racing Reference. But if we do some math, Frankie Muniz came into Charlotte 2 points behind Jesse Love. Jesse Love scored 48 points in the race. So you take 48 plus 144, that's what, 192? So you take 192 for Jesse Love following this race, plus the 50-point bonus. I forgot about that too. Forgot about that as well. This is the 50-point bonus race. So he'll have, 192? So that's 242 for Jesse Love. 242 for Jesse Love. So you take 50 points for Frankie. That's 192 with the 50 points. And then you take the 38 points that he scored in the race. That's 230. So that's a 22-point lead. I don't know how I just did all that math right on the spot for you guys, but you guys better be impressed by that. Jesse Love theoretically has a 22-point lead over Frankie Muniz. And since he finished ahead of guys like Greg Van Elst and Andres Perez de Lara, his legit only title contender, I'm sorry to say it right now, but it is very likely that Jesse Love has clinched the ARCA Menard Series championship. I don't want to necessarily say that, but let's face it, a 22-point lead, arguably the best car in the field. I don't see it changing. Unfortunately, we thought we were going to get a championship battle following Phoenix, with Andres Perez de Lara, Greg Van Elst, and Jesse Love. But with the way the last couple races have gone, it looks like that the 20 team has locked up the championship. Because if Muniz is 22 points behind and he's only second, well then here, let's do some more math. Andres Perez de Lara, realistically, the only other guy I thought could challenge for the championship, he's already 22 points behind. So you add in his 50, that's 172. So he's got 172 points. And then you add in the 37 that he got here. So that's what's 172, 37, that's 179. That's 209. 209. And you take 252 minus 2. I mean, that's what? 43 points? That's too much. That's too much. 43 points, that's too much. So I will just say this. The 20 has locked up the Drivers' Championship. I hate saying that this early in the year. We all thought he was going to win the championship pretty much this season anyway, but this last performance pretty much confirms that Jesse Love will easily be on his way to the ARCA Menard Series Drivers' Championship for 2023. But the Owners' Championship is still looking up, I will say. We do have a hard battle still for the Owners' title. Ironically enough, and this is kind of weird to say, but the 20 car is not leading the Owners' Championship. Right now, the current holder for the Owners' title lead is actually I believe it is still the 2 of Max Siegel, but not by much. The 2 car of Max Siegel, by virtue of LeVar Scott's top 5 finish at Daytona, actually holds the Owners' Points Championship lead, but not by much. The Billy Venerini car in 20 is second, and the Joe Gibbs 18 car is third, and they are separated by total less than 10 points. So while the Drivers' Championship might be locked up, we still have a fun Owners' Championship battle to look forward to. And with the 18 and the 20 running right around each other for pretty much, I would say, the whole year, that battle will be fun. While the Drivers' Championship, unfortunately, might be done for the year, we still have a fun Owners' Championship to continue to talk about. So, yeah, overall, like I said, the race was okay. I'm not going to call it a barn burner like it was last year, but I'm not going to call it crap either. I'll give it a good 7.5 out of 10. Not great, not bad, but a very solid good. Yeah, that was Charlotte. I don't know if they've shown it again on TV by this point. I'm sure there's a full race of it on YouTube somewhere. If you want to check it out, I think it'd be kind of fun to check out. And now we transition to the ARCA West Series. We haven't talked about these guys in quite a while. It's been a while since we talked about their last race at Kern County. But the ARCA West Series returns to Portland International Raceway, the big road course out there in Portland, Oregon. It will be joined by the Xfinity Series. And first off, it's just car counts. You know, we dragged the series last year about car counts. There was 16 cars for the first race last year and a dismal 13 cars for the second race at Portland last year as well. And I'm happy to say, while some of them is due to Xfinity Guys, we have a very, very solid car count for this race. I believe, 24 cars for the race. This is the entry list for, now there's no specific name for it. It's just a simple Portland 112, but these are the entries. We have the 4 of Eric Nascimento, one of the usual entries. Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst will be driving a Jerry Pitts entry, a Ford, of course. Takuma Koga, good old Takuma, my favorite ARCA West driver. Good old Todd Souza. Davey Margus. Sean Hingorani, of course, for Venturini. Tanner Reif in the McAnally entry, Landon Lewis in the MMI entry, William Sobolich, one of his rare West Series only starts. I do believe it was in his deal that he would make some West Series only appearances, but it's kind of cool to see William on the road course. It'll be interesting to see how he does with his lack of road course experience. Eric Johnson Jr. in the 19, another Bill McAnally entry. Dylan Lupton, I bet that's not a name you guys have heard in a while. He'll be in the Xfinity race, but he is also running the West race as well. In a team, it actually says TBA on the owner, so I don't know which team that is. If someone could fill me that in on the chat. Quarterman, Dale Quarterly. Gotta love seeing Dale on the show. I'm going to botch this name, and I'm going to try my best to pronounce this. Roxali Camper for Andrew Tuttle's team. Roxali Camper, is that right? Will be running the 39. So that's cool to see. Andrew Tuttle's team will be back for the first time this year. Yeah, I think, like I said, the chat saying, I think I got that name correct. Obviously, we got Tyler Reif in the 41, the full-time for Loudon Jackson Motorsports. And the 46 will be Kyle Sieg this week, Ryan Sieg's brother. He will be replacing RJ Smotherman for this race. Not a really big deal for RJ. He's not in the championship battle anyway, so it's not like it's a big deal if he sits out a race. RJ will still be there, I'm sure, crewing, but he just won't be driving. Trevor Huddleston will be in the 50, of course, for the old High Point Racing team, which was the former Sunrise Ford Racing. Ryan Philpott, he always comes out for the road courses, so good to see him back. Cole Custer will be in a second High Point Racing entry. So that's awesome to see. Awesome to see Cole Custer. Kyle Keller in another Jerry Pitts entry. This is the combination car with Steve Bohannon. They kind of co-own the car. Bradley Erickson in the 88. Caleb Schrader in the 99, not related to Ken Schrader. It's just another Bill McAnally entry. Parker Retzlaff, Young's Motorsports. They're making the trip all the way out to Portland with Parker Retzlaff with his Ponzi sponsorship, longtime partners in the ARCA series. Ethan Nascimento in the 04 and the 05 of the British Columbia, David Smith. Now, one guy you guys did not hear me mention, and it's kind of sad, but the sponsorship dollars have run out for poor Bobby Hillis. I can understand it. The real world issues we are seeing right now have skyrocketed costs to the point where it's just, you can't, the payouts in the series, you can't do anything with. It's basically useless. And the sponsorship dollars have run out. The Camping World partnership has ended, and that was pretty much the nail in the coffin for them right now. They're still searching for sponsorship. Bobby still has his equipment, but until sponsorship is found, don't expect to see the 27 at the ARCA West races, which really sucks because Bobby is like the Brad Smith and Wayne Peterson of the ARCA West series. No, Bobby does not even have enough money to start and park. Bobby, that's how bad the situation is. Bobby would lose money by start and parking. That's how bad it is. So, but overall, still a very, very solid entry list. No start and parks listed on there. I mean, if you're going to go to a race like Portland, you're not going to start and park a road course. So very, very solid field of cars for this. A lot of Xfinity guys in the field because, of course, the Xfinity series will be running there. So great to see some Xfinity guys in there. It's going to be an interesting race. Last year's race, I feel like it's hard to judge last year's races to this year's because we have so many different drivers. Jake Drew, I mean, he was, like I said, so sad to see that Jake Drew doesn't have a ride. He won both Portland races last year, dominated both of them. So it's really kind of hard to judge what these two races could look like. Connor Mosack, who was competitive in both races last year, will also not be in this race. So it's going to be hard to call it. It's going to be it's just going to be interesting to see because I don't see who could win this race. Sean Hingorani does not have a lot of road racing experience. Landon Lewis has a decent amount of road racing experience. William Sawalich, to my knowledge, has very little road racing experience. I'm sure he's been on the simulator. It's just so hard to tell. You got so many guys in competitive cars. I know everyone's just predicting Cole Custer to win. I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go, I'll go with Landon Lewis. I think Landon Lewis finally gets a win after so many second-place finishes. So I'm going to go with Landon Lewis. But if you want to give an underdog entry, I'll go with Cole Custer, mainly because High Point Racing hasn't been the best team, and I think that'll prove to Cole's demise. I don't think they'll be running Ilmores for this race. I'm sure they'll probably be using the Yates motors. So it's definitely going to be a difference for Cole Custer not using the same motor and definitely in a lesser car. That's for sure. Probably to what we expected him to be with. But like I said, I mean, the guys who could logistically win this race, Herbst, Souza, Hingorani, Reif, Lewis, Sawalich, Lupton, even throw in Quarterly, especially if we get on rain tires. Tyler Reif, Kyle Sieg, Huddleston, Philpott, Custer. I mean, we got so many guys who logistically can win this race. There's no real guy I'm going to say has the advantage over everyone else. I know people are saying I think Custer's just going to win it. I hope not. You never know what could happen. I mean, also, with how turn one goes at Portland sometimes, it's very well that Cole Custer could get taken out of this race. So we'll just have to see where that goes. The standings coming into this race, Landon Lewis currently leads Tyler Reif by 5 points. Sean Hingorani, by virtue of his 2 wins, has climbed back into the championship battle, only 9 points out. Trevor Huddleston, 12 points out. Bradley Erickson, 15 points out. Mathematically, they all still have a logistical chance of the championship. I think Tanner Reif, on down more than 20 points behind, has been eliminated from the championship picture. So still a very competitive championship battle in the West Series. And like I said, overall, it should be a fun race. The payouts for the race, again, with the real world issues, we need to up these purses by a minimum of $5,000 minimum. $5,000 for first, which is just, that's not good. And since we got 24 cars, last place, 24th, pays just $1,000. Now, since this is on Flow Racing gives an extra $200 to each car. So 20th, first through 20th will get an extra $200. With all contingency awards that are present, maximum purse money for first could be $12,750, $63.25 for second, and $40.50 or $40.50 for third. So yeah, there's one thing that the West Series desperately needs to improve on. It is payouts. Last place in ARCA should be no worse than $4,000 to $5,000. If the purse money is not even enough to buy a set of tires, that's the problem right there. And that goes for late model racing too. If the last place payout isn't even enough to buy a set of tires, then you need to fix something. Menards is a multi-million-dollar company. You're telling me that Menards cannot put enough money in to raise these payouts by even just a couple $1,000s? Come on, John Menard. We know you have the money to spend. We know you do. Just raise the payouts to a minimum so that way last place is not scraping by like crap. Even $4,000, even if guys like Peterson and Brad were getting $4,000 a race, you have no idea how much that would help them week to week. No idea how much. Even teams like Vennery, that would help them too week to week with, like I said, no ARCA race, in my opinion, should pay less. Main series race should pay no less than $50,000 to win. East and West races should pay no less than $35,000 to win. Last place should be no less than $5,000. John Menard, like I said, he's a multi-millionaire. Menard is a highly successful company. So I'm not gonna accept the excuse that they don't have the money for this. Put the money into the sport that you're sponsoring and raise these damn payouts so you can get some better car counts. You'd be shocked what a couple of extra $1,000 would bring in extra cars. It would. It really would. So, yeah, that's going to be a fun race. It will not be televised live on TV. It'll be on Flow Sports Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern in my area. So that's 7 p.m. In the Midwest, 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and 6 p.m. on the West Coast. Right? Isn't that how it works? Or am I that wrong? But if you do want to watch it on TV, it'll be on TV Sunday, June 11th on CNBC at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. But yeah, that's kind of the Portland race. Again, my pick for the race is Landon Lewis. Underdog pick I will take is Cole Custer. So it'll be a fun race overall. And like I said, unfortunately, don't expect live race updates because I will be unfortunately, I will be working, like I said, Gateway. I'm in Gateway this weekend with Hill Motorsports. So I will not be tweeting out any live race updates for that race or the Xfinity race as well. I will miss both of those races. So I will have to go back. Luckily with Flow Racing, you can go back and watch full races. I'll have to go back and watch the ARCA races when I get home. Probably Saturday night when I get home. I'll probably turn on the ARCA West race or Sunday afternoon because, all due respect, Cup Series should not be a gateway. I'll just say that right now. Cup Series should not be a gateway. They should be in Iowa. Calling from an Iowa fan. But nonetheless, guys, thank you for joining me in this weird room, my hotel room here at the Red Roof Inn. And yeah, catch me for some fun Truck Series action tomorrow with Hill Motorsports. It's going to be a scorcher here, and it's going to suck in some way. He's 91 degrees tomorrow and 95 on Saturday. So when I go live on Tuesday next week, I am probably going to be burnt to crisp. Yes. Until next week, guys, you guys enjoy your weekend at Gateway in Portland, and tweet out your photos and tweet out your live race updates so I can follow along. I need to follow along. So for anyone who's going to watch the race live, ARCA West Race Live, please tweet out your race updates. Send them to me so I can keep up to date with it, as we believe Truck Series qualifying will be going on while that race will be happening. So unfortunately I'll miss the whole thing. So yeah, I respect your opinion, but I'm happy Cup finally went to Gateway. I mean, yeah, fine. Yeah, I agree. Gateway would have been a lot better with the Gen 6 cars. 100%. Next 750 package with the Gen 6 cars, Gateway would have been phenomenal. Not with the next gen. Okay, so I'll give you that. Sorry, this is coming from a guy who desperately wants Iowa Speedway to come back on the NASCAR schedule. But anyway, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night and your weekend as a whole, and I'll catch you guys on next week for the I want to do this ARCA Racing podcast on Tuesdays. I just don't have the entry list. Otherwise, we have to wait till Thursday. So I'll see you on Tuesday either way at 7 p.m. Central. You guys know I'll be there. So have a great rest of your weekend. I'm signing off. Have a good night. We'll see y'all later.